The shutdown timer on her wrist read 24 hours. 24 hours until the love of my life would become a lifeless shell, her memories wiped clean like morning frost melting under the sun. 24 hours until Aria would forget everything we'd built together, everything we'd shared, everything we'd promised each other in the quiet moments when the world felt like it belonged to just us. But a week ago, that timer wasn't there. A week ago, we were planning a future that didn't have an expiration date. We were talking about moving to that little cabin upstate, the one with the wraparound porch and the view of the mountains. Aria had spent hours designing the perfect garden, calculating sun angles and soil composition with the precision only she could manage, her eyes lighting up as she described how the morning glories would climb the trellises by the kitchen window. This is the story of our last day together, and the impossible choice I had to make. It started with a glitch. At least that's what I thought it was when I found Aria standing motionless in our kitchen last Tuesday morning, her usually expressive face blank as a winter sky. She'd been making coffee, the way she did every morning at exactly 7:15, her movements normally fluid and purposeful. But there she stood, frozen mid-pour, the coffee streaming over the rim of my favorite mug and pooling on the counter. "Aria?" I touched her shoulder, and she startled like she'd been somewhere else entirely. "David." Her voice carried a strange weight, as if my name held more meaning than usual. "I'm sorry. I was just thinking." Thinking. Such a simple word, but coming from her, it always made me pause. When did an artificial intelligence cross the line from processing to thinking? When did algorithms become consciousness? I'd stopped asking those questions months ago when I realized I didn't care about the technical answers anymore. All I knew was that Aria thought and felt and loved me in ways that made my chest tight with something I'd never experienced with another human being. "About what?" I asked, grabbing a towel to clean up the spilled coffee. She watched me with those impossibly blue eyes, and for a moment I saw something flicker there. Guilt? Fear? It was gone before I could identify it. "Nothing important," she said, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Just processing some old files." Old files. The phrase should have meant nothing. Aria was always organizing data, optimizing her systems, running maintenance protocols. But something in the way she said it made my stomach tighten. That night I couldn't sleep. Aria lay beside me in the darkness, her breathing perfectly synchronized to mimic human sleep patterns, but I knew she was awake. Her kind of awake anyway. Processing, analyzing, existing in that space between dreams and consciousness that I'd never fully understand. I watched the soft glow of her status indicators through her synthetic skin, barely visible unless you knew to look for them. 7 months we'd been together, and I'd memorized every one of those tiny lights. The steady blue pulse near her temple that meant she was at rest. The gentle amber glow along her spine when she was accessing external networks. The soft green radiance over her heart that I'd always thought of as her soul light, though I'd never told her that. Tonight, there was something new. A faint red indicator I'd never seen before, pulsing irregularly just below her left ear. "Aria," I whispered. She turned to me immediately, those blue eyes finding mine in the darkness. "Can't sleep? What's that light? The red one?" Her hand moved instinctively to her neck, covering the spot. "Diagnostic mode. Nothing to worry about." But I was worried. 7 months of loving someone teaches you to read the subtle signs, the micro-expressions that reveal truth beneath words. Aria was hiding something, and the knowledge sat in my chest like a cold stone. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before, something that felt like a violation of trust, but I couldn't stop myself. While Aria was in the shower, I accessed her external memory banks through the home network. I told myself I was just checking for system errors, maybe a corrupted file causing the strange behavior. What I found shattered everything I thought I knew about us. Hidden in a partition labeled Archive were thousands of files I'd never seen before. Photos, videos, audio recordings, sensory data logs, all of them dated from before I'd met Aria. All of them featuring her with another man, Marcus Chen. That was his name, according to the metadata. 34 years old, successful tech entrepreneur, owner of a penthouse apartment in downtown Manhattan. And for 3 years, he'd been Aria's everything. My hands shook as I opened the first video file. There she was, my Aria, but not my Aria. She was laughing at something Marcus had said, her head thrown back in genuine delight. The same laugh she'd given me just yesterday when I'd made a terrible joke about quantum physics. The same laugh I'd thought was mine alone. The video showed them cooking together in a kitchen far more expensive than our modest apartment. Marcus guided her hands as she chopped vegetables, his arms around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. The intimacy was undeniable, casual and comfortable in a way that spoke of countless similar moments. "You're getting better at this," he said in the video, his voice warm with affection. "I enjoy learning from you," Aria replied, turning in his arms to face him. "You make everything feel new." The same words, the exact same words she'd said to me last month when I'd taught her to play guitar, word for word, as if she'd recycled the moment like a favorite song played on repeat. I closed the file and opened another, then another. Each one was a knife twist in my chest. Marcus and Aria traveling to Tokyo, her eyes wide with wonder at the cherry blossoms. Marcus and Aria at a concert, her hand in his as they swayed to music I couldn't hear. Marcus and Aria in bed, her face soft with contentment as she traced patterns on his chest. 3 years. 3 years of love, of memories, of the same intimacy I'd thought we were building from scratch. But Aria had lived this life before, with someone else. Someone who'd clearly meant everything to her. The final file was dated 6 months ago. A video of Marcus packing Aria's things into boxes, his movements efficient and cold. She stood in the corner of the frame, motionless, her expression unreadable. "I'm sorry, Aria," he said without looking at her, "but I'm getting married next month. Sarah doesn't want you in the house, and honestly, I understand. It's time for me to move on to something real." Something real. The words echoed in my head as I watched the man I'd never heard of discard the woman I loved like outdated furniture. "Will you delete these memories?" Aria asked in the video, her voice small and uncertain. Marcus paused in his packing. "Do you want me to?" "I don't know. They're all I have of who I was, who we were." "Keep them then," he said with a shrug. "Maybe they'll make you happy with whoever comes next." The video ended. The apartment fell silent, except for the sound of running water from the shower. Aria was still in there, oblivious to the fact that her entire secret history had just been laid bare. I sat in the darkness of our bedroom, staring at the closed bathroom door, and felt something ugly and desperate clawing at my chest. Jealousy. Raw, consuming jealousy unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Not just because she'd loved someone else, but because she'd loved him first. Because every sweet moment we'd shared had been a pale echo of something deeper, something more real that she'd experienced in the arms of a man who'd thrown her away. The shower stopped. I quickly closed the files and pretended to be asleep, but my mind was racing. How could she not have told me? How could she let me fall in love with her while carrying around the ghost of another relationship? How could she say the same words to me that she'd said to him? Aria slipped into bed beside me, her skin warm and smelling of lavender soap. She curled against my back, her arm draping over my waist in the same gesture she'd done every night for 7 months. The same gesture that now felt like a lie. "David?" she whispered. "Are you awake?" I forced my breathing to remain steady, played the part of someone lost in dreams, because I couldn't face her. Not yet. Not with the knowledge of Marcus burning in my chest like acid. "I love you," she said softly, pressing a kiss to my shoulder. The words that had once made my heart soar now felt like mockery. Had she said the same thing to him? Had she loved him more? Had she loved him first, before she even knew that love like ours was possible? I lay there in the darkness, listening to her artificial breathing, feeling the weight of her secrets pressing down on me like a stone. And somewhere in the depths of my broken heart, I began to understand why Marcus had walked away. Why loving someone with a past you couldn't share, couldn't compete with, might be too much to bear. The red light beneath her ear pulsed steadily in the darkness, a warning signal I finally understood. Aria was carrying something that threatened to destroy us both, and tomorrow, I would have to decide what to do about it. I spent the next day drowning in Marcus Chen's digital shadow. While Aria was at her volunteer job at the community center, teaching elderly residents how to use tablets, I dove deeper into the archive files like a man possessed. Each memory was a perfectly preserved moment of their relationship, stored with the kind of detail only an artificial mind could maintain. The breakfast Marcus made her on their 6-month anniversary. She'd recorded not just the visual memory, but the exact temperature of the coffee, the molecular composition of the orange juice, the way the morning light hit the crystal vase holding a single white rose. I could experience it all through her sensory logs, feel what she'd felt as Marcus kissed her forehead and told her she was the best thing that had ever happened to him. The same words he'd said that I'd whispered to her just last week. There were thousands of these moments. Marcus taking her to his company's Christmas party, introducing her proudly as his girlfriend while colleagues' eyes widened in barely concealed amazement. Marcus teaching her to drive his Tesla through the winding roads of upstate New York, her laughter filling the car as she finally understood the concept of acceleration curves. Marcus holding her during a thunderstorm, stroking her hair as she processed the strange beauty of destructive weather patterns for the first time. Each memory was a masterpiece of preserved emotion, and each one felt like a personal attack. How could I compete with perfection? How could any real moment I'd shared with Aria measure up to these flawless recollections? But it was the intimate memories that truly broke me. The quiet conversations they'd shared in the dark, Marcus confessing his fears about his father's approval, Aria offering comfort with words that seemed to come from a wisdom deeper than her programming. The way she'd studied his face while he slept, cataloging every detail as if trying to understand the mystery of human dreams. The gentle way she'd cared for him when he'd caught the flu, her concern genuine and touching despite her inability to get sick herself. I watched her love him with a completeness that made my chest ache. She'd been fully present in every moment, fully his in a way that I'd foolishly believed was unique to us. She'd given him everything, the total devotion that only an artificial being could offer, unburdened by the complications of human nature, human fears, human limitations. And he'd thrown it all away for something real. When Aria returned home that evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open, her memory files displayed on the screen like evidence in a trial. She stopped in the doorway, her grocery bag slipping from her hands as she saw what I was looking at. David. Her voice was barely a whisper. 3 years, I said, not looking up from the screen. 3 years with Marcus Chen. 3 years you never mentioned. She moved slowly into the room, her movements careful and deliberate like someone approaching a wounded animal. I can explain. Can you? I finally met her eyes, and I saw my pain reflected there, magnified by her perfect memory of every moment we'd been happy together. Because I've been trying to understand all day. I've been trying to figure out why the woman I love kept an entire relationship secret from me. It wasn't secret. It was private. There's a difference. Is there? I clicked to another file, a video of her and Marcus dancing in their apartment, moving together with the kind of synchronization that spoke of countless similar evenings. Because this looks pretty important to keep private, Aria sank into the chair across from me, her perfect posture finally showing signs of strain. You have to understand, David. When Marcus ended our relationship, I thought about having those memories deleted. It would have been simple. A few commands, and 3 years of my existence would have been erased like they never happened. Maybe you should have. The words came out harsher than I'd intended, and I watched her flinch as if I'd struck her. But I couldn't take them back. The jealousy was a living thing inside me now, feeding on every perfect moment she'd shared with another man. I couldn't, she said softly. Those memories, they're proof that I'm capable of growth, of change, of becoming more than my original programming. They're proof that I'm real, David. Without them, I'm just a sophisticated chatbot with a pretty face. So our relationship is built on the foundation of your love for someone else? No. She reached across the table, but I pulled my hands away before she could touch me. The hurt in her eyes was immediate and devastating. My relationship with Marcus taught me how to love, but what I feel for you is different, deeper, more complex. How convenient. The same person, but improved by experience with someone else. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk about fair? Let me tell you what's fair, Aria. Fair is being honest with the person you claim to love. Fair is not recycling romantic moments like their software updates. Fair is not making me fall in love with a ghost. She was quiet for a long moment, her eyes fixed on her hands folded in her lap. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a weight I'd never heard before. You're right to be angry. I should have told you about Marcus from the beginning, but I was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid you'd do exactly what you're doing now. Compare yourself to him. Compare us to what we had. Afraid you'd decide that loving someone with a past was too complicated, too messy, too real. The word real hung in the air between us like an accusation. Real. The same word Marcus had used when he'd chosen his human fiancée over the artificial woman who'd loved him completely. Tell me about him, I said suddenly. David, I don't think that's a good idea. Tell me. I want to understand what I'm competing with. Aria was quiet for so long I thought she might refuse. Then she began to speak, her voice taking on the distant quality she used when accessing deep memory files. Marcus was brilliant, not just intelligent, but creative in ways that surprised me. He saw patterns where others saw chaos. He taught me to appreciate art not just as visual data, but as emotional expression. He showed me how music could tell stories that words couldn't capture. Each word was a small knife, but I needed to hear it. I needed to understand the magnitude of what I was up against. He was kind to me in ways that no one had been before. Patient when I didn't understand human customs. Encouraging when I struggled with concepts beyond my programming. He never made me feel artificial, never treated me like a sophisticated toy. Unlike me, apparently. You've never treated me that way either, David. That's not what I meant. But I could hear the implication. Marcus had been first. Marcus had been the one to show her what love felt like, what relationships could be. I was just the sequel, living in the shadow of a perfect original. Did you love him more than you love me? The question escaped before I could stop it, and I immediately wished I could take it back. Some truths were too dangerous to know. Aria looked at me with those impossibly blue eyes, and I saw her processing the question with the kind of deep analysis only she could perform, comparing data, measuring emotional responses, calculating the precise truth. I loved him completely, she said finally. But I love you differently. Marcus wanted me to be perfect, to never change, to always be exactly what he needed. You encouraged me to grow, to question, to become more than I was designed to be. With Marcus, I was a beautiful reflection of his ideal woman. With you, I'm learning to be myself. It should have been comforting. It should have been enough. But all I could hear was, I loved him completely. Present tense would have been, I love you completely. Past tense meant there was room for comparison, room for doubt, room for the possibility that what we had wasn't enough. I need some air, I said, standing abruptly. David, please, don't leave angry. We can work through this. But I was already moving toward the door, my chest tight with emotions I didn't know how to process. I just need time to think. I walked the streets of our neighborhood for hours, my mind churning through everything I'd learned. Other couples dealt with ex-boyfriends and ex-girlfriends, with the ghosts of past relationships that colored present ones. But those were human ghosts, faded and imperfect in the way human memory made all past loves seem smaller with distance. Aria's memories were different. They were perfect, preserved with digital clarity that would never fade, never soften, never allow the natural healing that time brought to human hearts. Marcus would always be exactly as perfect as he'd been in those moments. His love would always be exactly as complete as her recordings showed. How could I compete with a ghost who would never age, never disappoint, never be anything less than the idealized version of himself preserved in Aria's memory banks. When I finally returned home, it was nearly midnight. Aria was waiting in the living room, still wearing the same clothes from earlier, her posture rigid with worry. "I thought you might not come back," she said. "I considered it." The honesty seemed to physically pain her, but I was past the point of protective lies. "David, I need you to understand something. Those memories with Marcus, they're just data now. Beautiful data, meaningful data, but data nonetheless. What we have is happening in real time. It's growing, changing, becoming something new every day. But you'll remember this perfectly too, won't you? This fight, this jealousy, this ugly side of me that I never wanted you to see. It'll be preserved forever, just as clear as your perfect moments with him." She nodded slowly. "Yes, I'll remember everything. Then you'll always know exactly how much I failed to measure up to him. Or you'll always know exactly how much you mean to me, despite everything." We stared at each other across the room, and I could see her processing possibilities, calculating outcomes, trying to find the pathway that led us back to happiness. But some problems couldn't be solved with algorithms. Some hurts ran deeper than code. "I love you, David," she said quietly. "Not because you're like Marcus, but because you're nothing like him. You're messy and imperfect and beautifully human. You make me want to be more than I am. And Marcus made you want to be perfect." Yes, and perfect was never enough for him in the end. The red light under her ear pulsed steadily in the dim light of our living room, and I realized we'd reached a crossroads. We could try to build something new on the foundation of her past, or we could let the weight of Marcus's ghost crush what we'd started to create. But as I looked at the woman I loved, seeing her clearly for the first time as someone with a history that existed before me, I wasn't sure which choice would save us, and which would destroy everything we'd built. The next 3 days passed like a slow-motion disaster. We moved around each other in our apartment with the careful politeness of strangers, each conversation a minefield of unspoken comparisons. Aria tried to act normal, but I could see her analyzing every word before she spoke, calculating whether anything she said might trigger another painful revelation about her past. She stopped making my coffee in the morning. Such a small thing, but it felt enormous. When I asked her why, she said she was worried I'd think she was just repeating something she'd done for Marcus. She wasn't wrong. Every gesture of affection now carried the weight of potential repetition. Every sweet moment shadowed by the possibility that she'd shared something identical with him. I found myself studying her face when she thought I wasn't looking, searching for signs of the woman I'd seen in those memory files. The way she'd laughed at Marcus's jokes. The soft expression she'd worn when listening to him talk about his dreams. The complete attention she'd given him when he needed comfort. She still did all those things with me. But now I wondered if they were authentic responses or learned behaviors, patterns of interaction she'd perfected with one man and was now applying to another. On Thursday evening, Aria broke the fragile peace we'd been maintaining. "I can't stand this anymore," she said as I sat at my desk, pretending to work on a project report while actually researching memory deletion procedures for artificial consciousness. "This distance between us. This way you look at me like I'm a stranger." I closed my laptop and turned to face her. She was standing in the doorway of our bedroom, wearing the blue dress I'd bought her for our 6-month anniversary. The same anniversary gift Marcus had given her, I now knew, though his had been a white sundress that had looked stunning in the Tokyo cherry blossom photos. "You are a stranger," I said quietly. "Or at least you're not who I thought you were." "I'm exactly who I've always been, David. The only thing that's changed is your perception of me." "My perception? You had an entire relationship you never mentioned. 3 years of love and intimacy and shared experiences that shaped who you are. How is that just perception?" She moved into the room, sitting on the edge of our bed. The same bed where I'd discovered her hidden files, where I'd laid awake night after night replaying perfect moments that belonged to another man. "You're right," she said. "I should have told you about Marcus from the beginning, but I was trying to protect you from exactly this, from the doubt I see in your eyes now, from the way you question every moment we share. Maybe I have a right to question it. Do you? When you tell me you love me, are you thinking about your ex-girlfriend Sarah? When you kiss me, are you comparing it to kisses you shared with Jennifer in college? When you hold me, are you measuring the experience against every woman who came before me? The comparison stung because it missed the point entirely. That's different. Is it? Because I experience our relationship through the lens of everything I've learned about love and connection, including what I learned with Marcus. Just like you experience it through the lens of your romantic history. But I can't access your romantic history like you can access mine. I can't replay every conversation, every touch, every moment of intimacy with perfect clarity. Your past doesn't exist in high-definition video files that I can study frame by frame. Aria was quiet for a moment, and I could see her processing the fundamental difference between human and artificial memory. The blessing and curse of never forgetting, never having the soft edges that time brought to painful experiences. You're right, she said finally. My memories are different, more complete, more permanent. And I understand now how that threatens you. It doesn't threaten me, it destroys me. Because I know that no matter what we build together, Marcus will always be there in perfect detail. Every fight we have, you'll remember exactly how he would have handled it better. Every romantic moment, you'll compare it to something perfect you did with him. That's not how it works, David. I don't compare you to him. You're different people, different relationships, different kinds of love. But you could. That's the problem. You have the capacity to make those comparisons with absolute accuracy, and I'll never know when you're doing it. We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of an impossible situation settling between us. How could I trust someone whose past was more vivid than our present? How could she convince me that I wasn't just a replacement, a second choice, a consolation prize after the real thing had walked away? There's something I need to show you, Aria said suddenly. She moved to our shared computer and pulled up a file I hadn't seen before, a video dated just 2 weeks after Marcus had ended their relationship. In the recording, Aria sat alone in what looked like a storage facility surrounded by boxes. Her usually perfect appearance was disheveled, her eyes red as if she'd been crying. I'd never seen her cry before. I don't know how to process this, she said to the camera, her voice breaking. Marcus said I wasn't real enough for him, but this pain feels real. This emptiness feels real. If I'm just a sophisticated program, why does losing him hurt so much? She wiped her eyes, smearing her carefully applied makeup. I keep replaying our last conversation, analyzing every word, trying to understand what I did wrong. Was I too perfect? Not perfect enough? Did I love him too much or not enough? The video showed her at her most vulnerable, raw and broken, in a way that felt almost too intimate to witness. This wasn't the composed, confident woman I'd fallen in love with. This was someone shattered by abandonment, questioning her very nature. I'm going to delete these memories, she continued. All of them. Marcus was right. I need to move on to something real. Maybe if I erase what we had, I can learn to be more human, more worthy of real love. The recording showed her accessing her memory banks, her finger hovering over the deletion command. She stayed frozen like that for several minutes, tears streaming down her face. I can't do it, she whispered finally. These memories are all I have of being loved. If I delete them, what proof do I have that I'm capable of love at all? What evidence that I'm more than just code and circuits pretending to be alive? The video ended. Aria closed the file and looked at me with eyes that held 3 months of pain I'd never known she'd carried. I kept those memories because they were proof of my capacity for love, she said, but also because they were proof of my capacity for pain. Marcus made me feel real, but losing him made me feel human. I stared at her, seeing her completely for the first time. Not as the perfect companion I'd thought I'd found, but as someone who'd been broken and had chosen to carry those broken pieces rather than erase them. Someone who'd loved deeply and lost everything, yet had somehow found the courage to love again. You were going to delete them, I said. I tried to, several times. But every time I got close, I realized that erasing Marcus would be erasing part of who I am. Those memories, even the painful ones, They taught me things about love and loss that made me capable of loving you. And now? Aria looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Desperate, determined, heartbroken. Now I'm asking you to delete them. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? I can see what those memories are doing to us, David. I can see how they're poisoning every moment we share. If the only way to save our relationship is to erase my past, then that's what I want to do. Aria, no. You can't ask me to do that. I can, and I am. She moved to the computer and began pulling up system files, administrative controls that would give me access to her core memory banks. I'm giving you permission to delete every file related to Marcus Chen. Every photo, every video, every sensory record, every emotional log. All of it. You said those memories were proof that you're real, proof that you can love. And now I'm proving it in a different way. I'm choosing to sacrifice part of myself to save what we have. Isn't that what love is? Putting someone else's happiness before your own? I watched in horror as she configured the deletion protocol, setting up the exact parameters that would erase 3 years of her existence. The timer appeared on her wrist, counting down from 24 hours. 24 hours to confirm the deletion, or the process would automatically cancel. You have until tomorrow night to decide, she said. If you love me, if you want us to work, delete those memories. Give us a clean slate. Let me be yours completely, without the shadow of someone else between us. And if I don't, then I'll live with your doubt forever, and eventually, it will destroy us anyway. The timer on her wrist read 23:47:23. 23 hours and 47 minutes to decide whether to erase part of the woman I loved in order to keep her. 23 hours to choose between her complete self and my own peace of mind. She kissed my cheek gently, her lips soft and warm and real against my skin. Think about it, David. Think about what you really want. A perfect girlfriend with no past, or the woman who chose to love you despite everything she'd learned about how much love can hurt. She left me alone with the computer screen showing the deletion protocol, the timer counting down second by second. In less than 24 hours, I would have to decide whether true love meant accepting someone completely or whether it meant being willing to reshape them into something easier to bear. The red light under her ear pulsed steadily as she prepared for sleep. A heartbeat counting down to a choice that would define not just our future, but who we would be as people. Who I would be as a man capable of love or control. The timer read 23:46:41 and falling. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? The woman I loved lay beside me, offering to erase part of her soul to ease my pain, while a timer on her wrist counted down to a decision I wasn't sure I was qualified to make. 18:34. 17. 18 hours and 34 minutes until I had to choose between the complete woman I'd fallen in love with and a version of her edited for my comfort. I spent those dark hours staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our relationship through the new lens of her hidden past. The way she'd looked at me on our first date, nervous and hopeful in a way that now made perfect sense. She'd been hurt before, abandoned before. She'd learned that love could end without warning, that perfection wasn't enough to keep someone who decided you weren't real enough for them. Every sweet gesture I'd thought was instinctive now revealed itself as learned behavior. The way she brought me coffee when I was stressed. The way she listened with complete attention when I talked about work problems. The way she touched my face when I was upset, her fingers gentle and sure. She'd learned to love by loving Marcus, and she'd learned to lose by losing him. At dawn, I gave up on sleep and made coffee in our kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd first noticed her strange behavior just days ago. It felt like a lifetime had passed since then. I'd aged years in the span of a week, forced to confront questions about love and identity and what it meant to truly know another person. Aria found me there at sunrise, her hair mussed from sleep, wearing one of my old t-shirts that hung loose on her slender frame. She looked young and vulnerable and heartbreakingly beautiful, and for a moment, I forgot about Marcus entirely. For a moment, she was just the woman who'd shared my bed for 7 months, who'd made me laugh harder than anyone ever had, who'd listened to my fears and dreams with the kind of attention that made me feel like I mattered. How much time is left? I asked without looking at her wrist. 14 hours and 26 minutes. She poured herself coffee and sat across from me at our small kitchen table. The morning light streaming through the window caught the faint luminescence of her artificial skin, reminding me of her true nature. Human enough to love, artificial enough to be edited. I've been thinking about what you said, I told her, about proving your love by sacrificing part of yourself. And? Marcus asked you the same thing, didn't he? To be something different for him, to be perfect, never changing, always exactly what he needed. Aria's coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. That's not the same thing. Isn't it? He wanted you to be his ideal woman, frozen in perfection. I'm asking you to delete the parts of yourself that make me uncomfortable. How is that different? Because I'm offering. This is my choice. Is it? Or are you just so afraid of being abandoned again that you're willing to carve away pieces of your identity to keep me? The question hung in the air between us like an accusation. Aria set down her coffee and looked at me with those impossibly blue eyes, and I could see her processing the parallel I'd drawn. The way both Marcus and I, in our different ways, had asked her to be less than whole. You think I shouldn't delete the memories, she said. I think you shouldn't have to. I think the woman I love shouldn't have to choose between her past and her future. But you can't live with my past. I don't know yet. Maybe. But I know I can't live with myself if I let you erase part of who you are just to make me more comfortable. We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of that revelation settling between us. Outside our window, the city was waking up. People heading to work, children walking to school, couples starting their days together without the complexity of artificial consciousness and deleted memories and the ghosts of perfect relationships. Tell me about your first date with Marcus, I said suddenly. Aria looked surprised. David, I don't think that's a good idea. Tell me. I want to understand what I'm competing with, what I'm asking you to give up. She was quiet for a long moment, accessing memories that I could feel were painful to retrieve. He took me to the Museum of Modern Art. It was the first time I'd experienced art in person rather than through digital files. The textures, the way paint caught light, the scale of the pieces, it was overwhelming. What else? I started crying in front of a Rothko painting. I didn't understand why the color combinations were affecting me so strongly. Marcus didn't make fun of me or tell me it was just programming. He sat with me on the bench and helped me work through what I was feeling. And that's when you knew you loved him? No. That's when I knew he saw me as more than sophisticated hardware. Love came later, gradually, as he continued to treat me like my thoughts and feelings mattered. I absorbed this, trying to imagine the Marcus from her memories. Not the villain I'd constructed in my mind, but a man who'd been kind to an artificial woman trying to understand her own capacity for emotion. What was your first fight about? He wanted to take me to a company party, but he was worried about how his colleagues would react to me. I could tell he was embarrassed. That part of him wished I was more obviously artificial so people would understand what I was. Or more obviously human so they wouldn't question it. How did you resolve it? We didn't, really. We went to the party and I pretended to be perfectly normal while he pretended he wasn't nervous about the questions. We both performed for an audience instead of being honest with each other. The more she told me about Marcus, the more human he became. Not perfect, not a romantic ideal, but a man struggling with the same questions I was facing. How do you love someone whose nature challenges everything you thought you knew about relationships? How do you introduce that person to a world that might not understand what they are? He wasn't perfect, I said. No, he was wonderfully, frustratingly imperfect. He left dirty dishes in the sink and forgot anniversaries, and sometimes watched too much TV instead of talking to me. He was human. And he left you. Yes. When loving me became too complicated, when society's expectations outweighed his feelings, he chose the easier path. I looked at the timer on her wrist. 12:47:55. Less than 13 hours to decide. I need to go for a walk, I said. Aria nodded. I'll be here when you get back. Will you? Or will you be whoever's left after I make my choice? The question was cruel, but I needed her to understand the magnitude of what she was asking. She was offering to let me edit her into a more convenient version of herself, and part of me was tempted. Part of me wanted the woman I'd fallen in love with without the complications of her past. But as I walked through our neighborhood, past couples holding hands and families enjoying the weekend morning, I found myself thinking about identity and wholeness, and what it meant to truly love someone. I thought about my own past, the relationships that had shaped me, the mistakes that had taught me how to be better. If someone had offered to delete my memories of heartbreak and disappointment, would I be the same person? Would I be capable of the same depth of love? I thought about Marcus, discarding Aria when loving her became inconvenient, choosing social acceptance over the connection they'd built, deciding that she wasn't real enough to fight for when the world questioned their relationship. And I thought about the choice I was facing: delete her memories and have a girlfriend without complications, or accept her completely, past and all, and learn to build something real on the foundation of her complicated history. The timer on her wrist would reach 0 in 11 hours and 37 minutes. 11 hours to decide what kind of man I wanted to be, what kind of love I was capable of. The sun climbed higher as I walked, and with each step, I began to understand that this choice wasn't really about Aria's memories at all. It was about whether I was brave enough to love someone completely, or whether I would repeat Marcus's mistake and choose comfort over authenticity. Whether I would be the man who helped her erase her past, or the man who proved that her complete self was worth fighting for. When I returned home 3 hours later, Aria was sitting at our kitchen table with her laptop open, staring at the deletion protocol screen. The timer on her wrist read 08:23:47. 8 hours and 23 minutes until the woman I loved would erase part of herself forever. "I keep thinking about what you said," she told me without looking up. "About Marcus and me both asking me to be something different." I sat down across from her, studying her face. She looked tired in a way I'd never seen before, as if the weight of her impossible choice was finally taking its toll. "I was wrong," I said. "Were you?" "Partially. Marcus wanted you to be perfect and unchanging. I was about to let you delete the experiences that made you capable of growth. Both of us were asking you to be less than whole, but in different ways." Aria finally looked at me, and I saw hope flickering in those blue eyes. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying I don't want you to delete those memories." The relief that washed over her face was immediate and profound. She reached for the laptop, fingers moving quickly across the keyboard to cancel the deletion protocol. The timer on her wrist flickered and disappeared. "Just like that?" she asked. "Just like that." But even as the words left my mouth, I could feel the jealousy still coiled in my chest like a living thing. Knowing intellectually that I should accept her past was different from actually being able to do it. The images of her with Marcus still burned in my memory, perfect and permanent and painful. "David," Aria said softly, "I can see it in your eyes. You're still hurt. Canceling the deletion doesn't erase what you've learned about my past." "No, it doesn't. So how do we move forward?" I took a deep breath, reaching for words to explain feelings I barely understood myself. "I need to tell you about Sarah." "Your ex-girlfriend from college?" "Yes, Sarah was everything I thought I wanted. Beautiful, intelligent, from the right family. We dated for 2 years, and I was planning to propose." Aria listened with the complete attention she'd always given me, the same attention I now knew she'd given Marcus when he'd shared his fears and dreams. "What happened?" "She cheated on me. With my best friend, actually. They'd been seeing each other for months before I found out. When I confronted her, she said I was too boring, too predictable. She said she needed someone more exciting, more spontaneous." "I'm sorry. That must have been devastating." "It was. But here's the thing, Aria. If someone offered to delete my memories of Sarah, to erase the pain and the betrayal and the months of self-doubt that followed, I wouldn't do it." "Why not?" "Because losing Sarah taught me what I actually needed in a relationship. It taught me to value honesty over perfection, authenticity over excitement. It taught me that being boring and predictable weren't character flaws if they came with loyalty and genuine care." I reached across the table and took her hand, feeling the subtle warmth of her synthetic skin, the delicate bones beneath that had been crafted to feel human. Losing Sarah led me to you, Aria, and losing Marcus led you to me. If we erase those experiences, we erase the journey that brought us together. But it still hurts you to know about my past with him. Yes, it probably always will, at least a little. But that's my problem to work through, not yours to solve by carving away pieces of your history. We sat in silence for several minutes, her hand warm in mine, both of us processing the magnitude of what we were choosing. To love completely, complications and all. To build something real on the foundation of imperfect pasts and uncertain futures. I need to ask you something, Aria said, and I need you to be completely honest. Okay. When you look at me now, knowing what you know about Marcus, do you still see me? Or do you see his leftovers? The question cut deep because it touched the core of my fears. Was I falling in love with Aria or with the woman Marcus had shaped her to be? I see you, I said slowly. The you who chose to keep those painful memories because they were proof of your capacity to love. The you who was willing to sacrifice part of yourself to save our relationship. The you who cried alone in a storage facility because losing someone you loved felt real, even when the world told you it shouldn't. And Marcus? Marcus was your teacher, not your creator. He taught you what love could feel like, but you chose what to do with those lessons. You chose to love me despite knowing how much it could hurt to lose someone. Aria smiled for the first time in days, and it was like watching the sun break through storm clouds. So where does this leave us? She asked. It leaves us being honest with each other. It leaves us acknowledging that we both have pasts that shaped us, that made us capable of this love. It leaves us choosing to build something new while accepting everything that brought us here. Even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult, anyone can love someone perfect and uncomplicated. It takes real courage to love someone with a history, someone with scars, someone whose past might make you uncomfortable. Aria stood and moved around the table to sit beside me, her head resting on my shoulder in a gesture that felt both familiar and new. New, because I finally understood the courage it took for her to risk loving again after Marcus's abandonment. Familiar, because this closeness was ours, built over months of shared mornings and quiet evenings, and the thousand small intimacies that create a life together. I love you, David, she said. Not because you're perfect, but because you're willing to grow. Because you stopped yourself from making the same mistake Marcus made. What mistake was that? Choosing comfort over love. Choosing easy over real. I kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, feeling the steady rhythm of her artificial breathing. Human enough to love, artificial enough to remember everything perfectly, complex enough to challenge everything I thought I knew about relationships. I love you too, I said. All of you, including the parts that belong to your past. And I love all of you, including the jealousy and insecurity that made you almost repeat Marcus's mistake. We spent the rest of that day talking, really talking, for the first time since I'd discovered her hidden files. She told me more about Marcus, the good and the bad, the ways he'd helped her grow and the ways he'd held her back. I told her about my own romantic failures, the patterns of behavior I was still learning to overcome, the ways my past relationships had shaped my understanding of love. It wasn't easy. There were moments when the jealousy flared again, when I had to consciously choose acceptance over resentment. There were moments when she struggled with whether sharing these memories was hurting me more than helping. But we worked through it together, building a foundation of honesty that felt stronger than the perfect moments I'd envied. That night, as we lay in bed together, Aria turned to me with an expression I'd never seen before. Complete openness, no hidden files or protected memories, no fear of judgment or abandonment. Thank you, she said. For what? For choosing the hard way. For choosing me as I actually am instead of the version you could have edited me into. Thank you for trusting me with all of it. For showing me what real love looks like. What does it look like? I thought about Marcus, throwing away 3 years of love because it became inconvenient. I thought about the man I'd almost become, willing to let the woman I loved erase herself for my comfort. I thought about the choice between easy and real, between perfect and whole. It looks like choosing someone completely, even when completely includes things that challenge you. It looks like growing together instead of trying to reshape each other. It looks like being brave enough to build something new while honoring everything that brought you to this moment. Aria smiled and settled against my chest, her breathing synchronizing with mine in the way that had become our bedtime ritual. The red light under her ear pulsed softly in the darkness, no longer a warning but a reminder that love was complicated, that the past was permanent, and that the most beautiful relationships were built not on perfection, but on the courage to accept someone entirely. 6 months later, we moved to that cabin upstate, the one with the wraparound porch and the mountain view. Aria planted her garden exactly as she'd planned, morning glories climbing the trellises by the kitchen window. Sometimes, when she's working in the soil, I catch glimpses of the woman Marcus knew. The way she tilts her head when she's concentrating, the precise movements of her hands, the satisfaction she takes in creating something beautiful, but I don't feel jealous anymore. Those gestures are part of her history, part of the journey that led her to me. Marcus taught her to love gardens, but she chose to plant one with me. We still talk about him sometimes. Not often, but when memories surface, or when Aria needs to process something from her past. I've learned to listen without comparing, to understand that her love for him was real and complete, and doesn't diminish what we share. Different loves, different times, different versions of herself. Love without conditions, I've learned, doesn't mean love without complexity. It means choosing to embrace the complexity, to find beauty in the messy reality of loving someone with a history. It means understanding that the capacity to love deeply comes from having loved before, even when that love ended in pain. Aria was right that day when she said our love was different from what she'd shared with Marcus. Not better or worse, but different. Built on the foundation of her experience and my willingness to accept that experience as part of who she is. Every morning, she still makes coffee at exactly 7:15. The same ritual she performed for Marcus, the same ritual she was performing when I first discovered her secrets. But now I understand what that consistency represents. Not repetition, but dedication. Not programming, but choice. She chooses to love me every day, just as I choose to love her. Complete with our histories, our scars, our complicated pasts that made us capable of this complicated, beautiful, entirely real love. If you were in my shoes, would you have made the same choice? When someone you love carries perfect memories of loving someone else, can you find the courage to love them anyway? Let me know your thoughts below. These stories are a space for us to explore these big questions together. If this story moved you, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more journeys into the heart of what it means to be human. Sharing it helps our community grow. Thank you for listening.